Anyway, my name is Tonya Woldridge. I am the Organized Play Manager at Paizo, Inc. Get to come out here. It's first time in DC-ish area, so I was very excited. I get to come back in June, so if you guys are local, come to the American Library Association conference that's out here. We'll be running games there. So I'll be bringing one of our sales team out with me on that one, and we will be doing a whole bunch of demos and evening stuff and play and more play. So, you know, never get to DC and then all of a sudden twice in a year. It's great. Love my job. So organized play, what do? I manage the worldwide network of volunteers and the four organized play programs that Paizo uses. So Pathfinder Society, Starfinder Society, Pathfinder Adventure Card Guild that maybe I'll find out in an email if it's going to be new society, and the upcoming Pathfinder Society 2. So lots of exciting news this year. Starfinder is just over a year old, and that has brought with it a lot of learning curves because no one on the team was there when the Pathfinder Society was formed. We all inherited our jobs afterwards. So we kind of done a lot of, well, if we could have, what would we have done and what would we like to do? And now starting with Pathfinder Society 2, we get to do it all over again and say, hey, you know, we tried this, it didn't work as well, or we tried this and it was really great, so we want to do more of it. Some of those things are being driven by society and what gamers like now versus what they liked 10, 15 years ago. And some of that is being driven by just what we like. But most often, the case goes to what do our players want? What do we need to build infrastructure-wise to make a game that people want to play? And how can we support that as a company? Because one of the things that has been adamant from the beginning before I even got to Paizo was this is a player's game. And it's a community. It's a gaming family. And if we can't support that, we're not doing our jobs right. So a little bit of things that we've revealed in the past couple of weeks, months, with Pathfinder Society 2, because I think that's the big one. How many of you play Pathfinder Society now? Anyone? Okay. Yeah, I recognize a couple of you from the room. How many of you play Starfinder Society? Okay. And are any of you looking forward to playing Pathfinder Society 2? Okay. And what brings you to the panel? Just okay. Curiosity is a good thing. How about you guys? Are you AL players? Are you Earthdawn players? Chaosium players? DM Starfinder. Okay. Cool. You guys? Oh, cool. Awesome. So a little bit of experience across the different pieces. I'm going to keep drinking, otherwise I will get this very froggy throat and start croaking at you, and that's not helpful in a panel. So when Paizo started in 2002, it was a publishing arm for magazines. It was done because Wizards did not want to publish their Dungeon and their Dragon magazines anymore, or Star Wars Insider. We fast forwarded a few years, 4th edition was announced, and Paizo said, well, we can make a role-playing game. We've got gamers on staff. We all like to do this, right? And they came out with Pathfinder. Extremely successful. It took a homebrew world from the current employees and melded it with some homebrew rules and upgrades that people had thought they wanted in 3.5. And because of the opening game and license, we could do all this and throw a book out there, and people loved playing it. And it was great. And every year we kept publishing more books because, you know, if you're a publishing company, you kind of got to keep putting things out. And it got to the point that there were more house rules and small bits in all of these books that keeping up with it, I can't. I will admit that. I am the first one to say I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge. That's why we have John Compton on staff, because he can remember every location and every venture captain in any published material. It's really kind of amazing. I try and play Stump the Compton sometimes at work. I'm like, okay, go. And he goes, oh, we've already done that because it was in here. And he opens the book to the page and he hands it to me. I'm like, dude, oh my God. Okay, we won't do that this year. So we had gotten to that point, we had done so much, we needed to bring the rules back tighter, and we needed to bring them back into a new core rule book. Also, in 12 years, we've had this explosion of gaming, and lots more people want to play, and a whole bunch of newbies. And when you walk up to someone and you hand them a book and you say, hey, do you want to come join me in my hobby? And they go, yeah, that's really cool. Or you go up and the mountain of these books, and you go, hey, do you want to read all these and then join me in my hobby? And you get this look like, no, where's the video games? Let's go play something else. It is just too much, too big of a library. That being said, the stories that are in those libraries and the world setting that's in that library is still very valid. The only thing that we are really attempting to change is the mechanics on how gameplay runs, on how we can present it to players, and how we can make that experience translate to people that might have come to video games before role-playing games, or they might like to play collectible card games, but they now want to tell a little bit more of a story as they're sitting around with their cards. How can we bring those people into the role-playing game hobby? And that's where organized play comes in, because we are the most visible arm of what Paizo does. They publish books and they put them out there, but if we can't get them into people's hands and have people try it out, they're not going to play it. It's just going to be yet another title on another shelf, and people are going to go, yeah, okay, seen it. This is a bookstore. I can pick one thing. I'm going to pick the one I know. So we're trying to get the word out there, and that's why we did the playtest. One, it's a lot of valuable feedback, because I said at the beginning, this is a game we want the players to play. It's great if we think it's a great idea, but if only the 15 of us, 20 of us that are playtesting it think it's a great idea, that's not going to help us sell books either. We could be telling each other really good stories, but it doesn't help us. So we took the playtest to the masses starting in August, and we made it free, which again is another piece that most people are like, free? Why are you going to give any, you guys spent time and R&D on this, why are you going to give it out for free? Because we want you to play it. If you like it, we hope that you'll support us by buying a print copy. But, you got to like it first. Here's a trial. Over the last few months, because we just wrapped playtest right before Christmas, because we all wanted to have a couple of weeks of rest and breather before we went back into fixing the manuscript, and I don't think a couple of people got that, but we took the feedback and we started changing systems week by week by week, and we put out more things on blogs, and we put out, hey, well, why don't you try this? If you don't like that, try this. It's kind of like going to the optometrist, which is better, A or B? All right, flip. Now try these ones, A or B, flip. But the data that we've gotten from the surveys and everything that we did has allowed us to go in and really tweak the system. And I tell you all this because I can't tell you a lot of what's going to happen in Pathfinder Society 2 because I'm waiting on these final rules. The team, when we set out to do this, it was, we're going to do an edition. Oh, and we're going to have a new society to launch at Gen Con in August. At the same time as we launched the core rule book, and we said, so what kind of window does that actually give us with the rules? And they said 4 months. We all kind of looked at each other and went, okay. Yeah, and they said, oh, and it's 4 months in con season, so most of you are out of the office traveling and doing things. We went, gotcha, okay, pre-planning is our friend. So we've done a series of surveys to the Pathfinder Society membership saying, what would you like to see? Given that we don't know what the final game's going to look like yet, but we can tell you some things. We can tell you some things we're going to do and some things we're not going to do. And I firmly believe if I know I'm not going to do something for the program, I'd rather say it up front and break hearts and have people mad at me right out the gate instead of dragging along and then at the end saying, oh, by the way, I'm not going to let you do this. So in putting out the new edition, we have to serve two different groups. We have to serve the new players that are just coming into the game, maybe never played a role-playing game before, or they've tried one or two, but they're looking for something different. And we have to deal with our established players and make sure that we're serving them because they've been with us 10, 11 years at this point. And that's been a very fine line. So some of the things that we said we were going to do is we have a merit system for our GMs. If you GM 10 games, you get a star after your name. It says you know how to GM. If you GM 30 games, you get 2 stars after your name. And because we're gamers with likes of math, if you get 60 games, there's a pattern here, you get 3 stars. If you get 100 games, you get 4 stars. And then we reserve that 5th star for someone who has done some of the special interactive events. They sit down and they have to run a table for one of our venture captains who's usually experienced in the game as well, to make sure that if we give you a 5-star name rating, it says you're a good GM. And if you sit at this person's table, you should have a good experience. Now, this does not account for GM styles being different from player styles. This doesn't account for off days. But as a rule, you can look at the GM's rating and say, okay, I'm going to enjoy this. They know what they're doing. We carried that over into Starfinder, and we've said we're going to carry it over into Pathfinder 2. There will be a way for our GMs to get recognition. However, we're not carrying scores over from either of the earlier editions. You have to start from scratch. And this caused a lot of consternation, but like I said, I'd rather give you bad news up front and then tell you all the cool things we can do behind it than, oh yeah, we can do this. We had talked about maybe subsidizing those and saying if you got something from Starfinder or Pathfinder 1, you'd get it for Pathfinder 2. And Tech looked at me and said, are you crazy? What do you want us to write you? And I went, fine, okay. I won't ask for that one. So we backed off from it. We have decided that they will be glyphs because it's a symbol that's been long associated with the Pathfinder Society. They use a symbol called the glyph of the open road, and it's like 2 little crossed roads that are stylized. So we know we're going to call them glyphs. We know you're going to earn them. We know they're going to be approximately the same requirements that you've had, but there's going to be a few things in there as well to make it a little easier to get, especially for people that live in the middle of nowhere and don't have other people around them as close or are running online and they can't get people in. Another thing that we tried with Starfinder, we want tables of like levels to sit together. So we normally put tiers, we call them tiers, levels. Level 1, 2 players together at tables. Level 4, 5 players together at tables, and 3s, we kind of said, sit where you need to sit. You can play anywhere. You're kind of our balance. And it was a 1 to 5 range. This was causing some problems because those 3s, if you had a table of all 3s, well, which do you run as a GM? Do you run the high tier or the low tier? How do we solve this out? So for Starfinder, we closed it down. We didn't leave anybody out, and we just said either you're 1-2s or you're 3-4s, you're going to play at that table. If you don't play at that table, if you're 1 playing at a table of 3-4, take some healing potions and healing serums, and I hope you make it. You might not want to get in front. If you're a 4 and you're playing at a table with level 1-2s, stand back a little bit and let them have some challenge before you just go in and kill the big bad guy. The tables tend to monitor themselves. So we closed the level range, and we are going to keep it closed for Pathfinder 2. We've kind of said that that's a big thing for us. Which another one we said was that Starfinder, we haven't put a top cap on. One of the reasons we always capped adventures in Pathfinder Society at 12 was because the game mechanics themselves bogged down, and running a 4-hour game got really hard at levels 13, 14, 15, 16. They're great for home games. I adore 20th level play, but it's not something I can do at a convention. And as a GM, I don't want to try and keep my focus on that kind of game with everything else that goes on in a convention. So we said we're kind of done at 12, except for we'll do a couple of odd things that will go up in levels. With Starfinder, we don't know where that top is. We haven't found where we break the time limits. So this year they're starting, we did 1, 2, 3, 4s and 3, 4, 5, 6s. Then we added the 7, 8s in. Now we're adding 9, 10, and 11, 12 in this next year, I believe. So we want to keep that closed level system, but we haven't said what our top will be. If we can do 20th level play because the new system mechanics allow us to do it, we will have it in Pathfinder Society too. So those are some of the big ones, but high level play is always desired, especially from our established players. They want to get in there. They've had these characters. You grow attached to your character. You don't want to stop playing them. So this year, we've kind of ramped up our high level offerings, and we're offering extra high level scenarios in June and July, because we know this is the final wrap-up of this storyline. There will be also high-level content in an interactive special for the first time in 6 years. So we do 1 or 2 all-room playing the same thing events when we go to our bigger conventions. So we've said this year it will be a 3-table minimum, so a lot of places can play it, but it will start at level 5, and it will go to level 15. In some panels and interviews, the working title was announced, and we announced it as the Grinder, and that had a lot of player consternation when we announced this. And we weren't trying to scare people at all, really, but it was kind of the idea was you could take in a whole bunch of characters, and if one of your characters was going to die because it's harder and tougher, and you could have another character heroically jump in front of the sword, or, you know, aid in the last bit, or take the fall on the trap, or whatever, you could sacrifice a character and you could continue your main character storyline a little bit further, because I said, I don't want to go to Gen Con and have a 5-hour spot and have a table killed in the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then have them sit there and stare at the walls for 4 hours. We can't do this. You don't understand. And my coworkers agreed with me. So we were coming up with mechanics that would allow people to stay in the game longer. Because it's supposed to be epic. It's going to be a massive fight. We've got to, you got to end it on the high note. So, but after talking about it in the name, and unfortunate, we've renamed it to the finale. And we're talking about having 2 modes. We're talking about having normal mode and having hard mode. And if you want to sacrifice your characters, and if your character would just be that, hoorah, I'm going out and I'm going to take everyone with me, you know, strap everything on and let's go. You can, but you can also go help save the world without killing everyone off. Okay. Okay.
So is Pathfinder 2.0 like a complete reboot? Like there's a multiple different, like from starting new characters, new races, and everything, or is there like
Yes and no. All right, so I will expand on that answer. It is a new system, and it's got new mechanics. So from that, you need to start back at the beginning. There's no way, especially given the amount of stuff that's been published, versus the one book that's going to be published, we can't get all those races and all those classes out fast enough. So we don't want to tell, the cleric, 20th level cleric, well, yeah, you can bring your character, but, oh, Mr. Alchemist, you didn't make the cut, or better, because the Alchemist did make the cut, War Priest. Mr. War Priest, you can't bring your character because we didn't write rules for you yet. So we are asking everyone to start over again. The storyline and the adventures, you will be able to convert. So if you liked one of the APs and you never got around to playing it, one of the adventure paths, you can say, oh yeah, I'm going to play this one in the new version, and you can change, the mechanics will change. Right, so the hard mechanics can't come over. And so that's the piece of it. So the adventure paths, the campaign settings, the world settings, there will be some changes because we are going to establish the new baseline of what the world looks like after this cataclysmic event that the society has to do. It's not if people have lived through other edition changes, it's not a spell blight. We're not metering the earth and taking away half of the continents. They're going to be there. But it's more on geographical boundaries might have changed. It's the end of the last adventure path. We are going to say what happened and what's true for the setting. So we've got one that Baba Yaga comes in and changes the ruler every 100 years. Who's the ruler in that country now? Well, let's set it and make it canon and say this happened. We had one where an entire nation tried to rise up and revolt. Is that going to happen? And we'll say yes or no. So the underlying underpinnings is history for all of these areas. The world is going to continue and the clock's going to go on one day more, but there is going to be some conversion that just can't happen. From a society standpoint, that means everyone gets to start at level 1. But if you've played playtest over the last year, you've been racking up playtest points. And you can earn these through July. And those playtest points can be used to buy a second level character or buy some upgrades for a character. So we're rewarding the playtest in a points mechanic that you'll be able to spend, kind of like going to Chuck E. Cheese and earning all the tickets, and then you go up to the table and you go, I want this, this, and this. You'll be able to buy a selection with your points. One of the things that our convention organizers do, we send out boons, we send out certs, we send things out to the conventions, but it's on the organizer to print all of it. And I'll tell you, at Gen Con, our printing bill is in the $6,000 just for organized play. That doesn't count anything for the rest of the staff. It's a pretty huge amount of paper that we go through. And we don't need to have paper in a digital world, not nearly as much. I mean, as I watch people with phones and tablets and everything else, carrying my binder of characters isn't nearly as important today as it was when I started Society 10 years ago. So we've decided to go more digital. And in going more digital, we want to go to these kind of point-based, where everything is a selection menu on our website, and you go in and you say, okay, for this character, I'm going to click this, pay the points, done. Now my character has something. So simplicity, it's beautiful. And that's why tech told me I couldn't subsidize glyphs, because I had already given them like 8 different things they needed to do for me before July, and they were just like, we don't think we can handle another one. We'd prefer not to. But so we're trying to make it so you and your dice and a tablet can go to any convention and play. We think that this will get more, again, be more conducive to the newer players. And I won't break any people's back that helps me lift my luggage. And, you know, because I have 2 binders about that thick right now. So.
Work that you kind of bring the Starfinders and organized play kind of into a similar type of setup? So.
Yes, that is the goal. We are rolling it out with 2 because that is the easier one to test it on, should it work. At Origins 2020, we will go away from paper boons for Starfinder, and we will have digitized everything, and you'll be able to go back in and have there will be a grace period where you can enter things in for free, basically. So those are a lot of the pieces I have, the big overview pieces of what we're looking at. I will say the other piece that we had is we've done a lot of brainstorming on what the storyline looks like for one. Because these are the things we can do ahead of time. What do factions look like? What does the story look like? Who's still alive at the end of it? Who did we kill off? And if you have seen a couple of the surveys recently about faction leaders, we might be trying to get your opinion on who you like and who you don't like. Because I'll tell you, at least one of them is dying in a great, big, wonderful output. And I'll tell you, one will stay. Other than that, we haven't made our decision yet. So, you know, time to weigh in. The surveys are still open. Everything that I'm talking about, we have Paizo.com, and there is a page for organized play, and everything links off of that page, so you can go in and you can find out more information. It'll show you coordinators in your area, so you can find games, because all of the organized play is done by venture captains and venture lieutenants and venture agents. So they run in stores, they run in libraries, they run in community centers, they run in their homes, they run at conventions. And that is your local in to getting involved with organized play. And they'll explain the few changes about how to make a character that we have to do so that everything's consistent. And the other beautiful thing is you can take it from here and you can go play at Dragon Con, you can go play at Gen Con, you can go play in a game store somewhere, and it just keeps going. It's the same character, same story. It's just another adventure in the piece. I got really lucky. I got to play in Europe, and then I got to play in Canada, and then I got to play in Seattle. So, you know, I appreciate having a portable game method, because finding gaming communities can be hard. You know, building them up from scratch can be very difficult. So being able to go into a store and going, I'm here with my character, what are we playing this week, is really awesome. So one of the things that we had, I don't even remember where I was going with this, so maybe we'll get back there. Does anyone have other questions for me? Yeah.
Okay, so I literally super new to like organized play being in the Okay, so if I'm in an organized game, right, and my character dies, does that mean I'm not allowed to just go somewhere else and just be like, I was level 4 one and just be like, hi, I'm level 4 still, or are they like dead?
They're dead-ish. We have multiple, we don't want you to die, because we realize that when you die, it ends the storyline. So there are, for new players, there's a welcome to Pathfinder or welcome to Starfinder boon that allows you to get better healing, cheap. It's just free healing. Here, have it. So you shouldn't die in your first game. We have an incentive program for our stores that if you spend money on something in store, and it doesn't have to be Paizo, if you buy anything in the game store and play a game that day, you get benefits, including better healing. We've tried to put a lot of our boons in our convention rewards. You can call on someone to raise you from the dead for cheap. You can go into debt to be raised from the dead with a certain boon. And what I love about the community is I can sit there with my boon and you can be the one that dead, and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, here, this boon is now yours. You know, you can go into debt and raise your character and you're not out. Because unfortunately, the way organized play does work, you can only play a game once. And then you can GM it once, play it once, and you're kind of done unless there's some corner cases. There are some replay methods, but they're not as available. They're just not, oh yeah, you can play this one 10 times. And usually it's to stop people from going in and going, okay, we know where, you know how you do runs in video games. We know where the treasure is. We don't want to go through this level again. Kick, hit, slap, grab the treasure, done. I can be done in half an hour. And so we don't want that experience, especially if a new person's at the table. We don't want the experienced people to run, you know, we'll run you through this dungeon. That's not role playing. That's dungeon running. I do that in Guild Wars and it's fine, but not at my tabletop. So, you know, that's kind of the mentality is how can we, so the community itself can pitch in to raise dead too. So the whole table can say, we're all gonna throw in 1,000 gold. Okay, you're alive again. So it is final if you can't use any of the other methods that we've put in the stop gaps. And sometimes it happens. But in the 4 years I've been running games in this position, I have yet to have a permanent death. So I feel I'm not an easy GM. I'm not a hard GM, but I'm not an easy GM, and I have not successfully killed anyone. I'm still trying, mind you. I'm still trying. If you come play my tables this weekend, we'll see, because there's some of the harder games. So, any other questions? Yeah. It's not ending. One of the things that we said we would do is that we would keep it as part of our rotation. The files are still in our computer systems. We're not pulling them out. So a convention organizer or a games organizer will be able to ask for support based on the number of tables of 1, of 2, and of Starfinder, and of the Adventure Card Guild. So it's a little more weight on the organizers to schedule in 4 different types of games. But if that's what the region wants, you can stay 1 as long as you want. There will not be anything new published. At this time, the plan is not to publish anything new. We reserve the right to change our minds at any point in time on this one, you know, because I never want to say, well, we said we'd never do it. I mean, we've heard that. We said we'd never make another edition. No, we never did. We said it was not in the plans at this time, and it wasn't 10 years ago. But, you know, it kind of got to that point we needed to. So you'll still be able to play at conventions. You'll still be able to play at your home. You'll still be able to report them. We are looking to produce one final boon package that would go out to any event that has them, so there will still be boon support for them. We just aren't going to task the writer team to write more. And we could take and just say every year we're going to go back to our old archives and pull out a new selection, and this will be the boon package for the year. You'll still be able to create characters. The race boons are still valid. Now we are making some incentives to play 2 if you have them. One of the things that we put out for survey, and too many of us were out of the office over the last 2 months to make any final decisions after the survey closed, so it's on our docket for the next couple of weeks. But we're looking at what rate would you feel turning a boon in for a benefit in 2 would be. Do we want to make a stock of benefits that if you turn something in, you could? We've talked about making the raised dead issue, especially with a new system. We're not as familiar with it. We don't know how to pull the numbers. We're going to want to try everything, and some of those combinations aren't going to necessarily be viable. But so, you know, can you take a race boon and put it in, and that would bring your 2 character back? What kind of conversions there? We've also said there will be some version of replay. So we want to allow people that have played a lot of 1 stuff to continue to play 1 stuff. We don't want to have the dungeon runners. So we're trying to find what is that middle ground. Is it based on GM stars? Is it just an allotment every year? It's another survey that's up. I mean, it sounds like I'm saying survey a lot, and I am. Because, again, we want to make the decisions based on the player base, not based on what our personal feelings are on it. And things like we don't even know what goblins are going to do, so we got to wait until the design team tells us, and then we can make decisions on how we're going to handle things like that. But yeah, because we know right now that 7 classes came over, and there's a lot more choices. I agree. Yeah.
What about early scenario support? What's the current plan? Well, at least at Gen Con.
We are launching it like we did Starfinder with an pre-gen special, so that people can get in and not have to worry about buying their book and writing their character in an hour. And the fact that the dealer hall opens 2 hours after we start playing games in the Sagamore, unless you have a TARDIS, we're gonna have some problems. So the idea is we will have a pre-gen special that will launch, and then we will have this summer at Gen Con, and then we will have 1, 2, and 3 right out the gate that will be available at Gen Con. One of those will be a quest pack format. Plus, when we put our editorial schedule together, we asked for a quest a month, because we had heard that the stores can't always give you a 4-hour time slot. Because if you don't get off work until 7 and the store wants to close at 9, you can break up scenarios. But what happens when you play first half of the scenario, and then the next week you show up and some people are there and some people aren't there, and you got new players, and then you got to play the first half again, and you never quite get to the second half. So they're going to be 1-hour quests that can combine to the benefits of a level. So we're going to publish 2 scenarios and a quest every month. Yep. And we're arranging the XP in a way that it'll probably be a quarter point, and when you play 4 of them, you'll get a full point towards your level. For those of you that aren't familiar, one of the things that organized play does is, instead of getting experience points, you get 3 points. Instead of getting thousands of experience points based on what you play, it's just you finish an adventure, you get 1 point. 3 points and you level. Yeah, it's absolutely 3 points you level. It doesn't get bigger between each level. We want you to keep a progression that goes reasonable. The scenarios that release at Gen Con will be in the 1 to 4 range, because we know that people aren't going to be able to do it. But we are also looking at the Starfinder model, where we sanction the adventure paths out the gate. So you'll have all the adventure path content that will be society legal as well, because we want that to be able to augment, and I believe 2 of them are replayable. The pre-gen special and the quest pack will be replayables out the gate as well, because we want people to play. And if it goes over gangbusters and people ravenously love it, I might be able to lobby for another staffer, which means we can add more scenarios to our production. But we found out that the production queue is pretty much 1 scenario per developer per month is kind of the thing. So we have 4 developers, we get 4 scenarios, plus all the con support, plus the adventure card game is in there as well. Going back on that one a little bit, for those of you that like card games, we have the adventure card game that's card game with role-playing, because it's got all the information on the iconic characters that we use in the RPG, but they're there in a card-based format. It's a base set. We have taken it under revision. One of the feedbacks that we got was we published a new themed set every year, 4 years running, and it was just too fast. And it flooded the market, and people were like, we can't keep up with this model. Base set and 6 decks is $120, and that's like all of our disposable income, and we can't do this, so please stop producing base sets. And we said, okay, well, what do you want instead? And they said, well, is there any way to make a base set that could have additions to it? And I asked this of the game creator, and he looked at me and goes, oh, that's an idea that will never work. 4 months later, he was in the office saying, oh, I came up with this really great idea. We're going to make a base set that we can just keep adding decks to and change the flavor of it. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, okay. So I went home and thought about it, and you were right. We could. I'm like, great. All right. Yeah, he did. I appreciated it. So what we've done is we've stripped out a lot of the customization of it and made it just what you need to play the game. And then there's add-on decks that will add on. The first one, we Curse of the Crimson Throne. It's an AP that we've already done. They're going back to that storyline because it makes sense. And they've already written it, and we don't have to worry. People like playing it. So, if the story's good, why not convert it over? We've had success with some of our other ones. So that one's coming out for Starfinder, for those of you that play and run or are interested in playing and running. It launches at Origins. So to save the sanity of my team, we don't launch all of our major products in 1 month. At Gen Con, we stagger them out. So the adventure card game will come out at PaizoCon into May. And then 2 weeks later, we will launch Origins and Starfinder Society. And then a month later, we will launch Pathfinder 2 and the final wrap-up to 1 at Gen Con. Starfinder Society this year will also have an interactive at Origins if it's a convention you guys can get to. But again, it'll be able to be run anywhere else. And it's a 3-table minimum because we want people to play it. If we go 4 or 5 tables, it starts getting harder for our smaller conventions to do it, especially in the European markets and the Asian markets. But it will be in most of our interactives, you could call them a battle interactive. They're combat heavy. This one will not be combat heavy. I have been told it will be more discussion and role play and involvement. And given that Thurston Hillman, the Starfinder Society developer, has agreed to stay on with us for another year of Starfinder Society, and he came up with some of the big changes in our interactives and how they were written, and he's spearheading this one. I expect to see something different. But there will be combat. I think there will be one version that has spaceship combat for those of you that like tactical spaceship. For those of you that don't, there will be other options. So you don't have to. One of the other things that's coming over into 2, Starfinder Society has tags that we've started putting on everything that tells you, is it a vehicle combat? Is it a spaceship combat? Is it a replayable? And you can look at the front page and you can see just in a glance, this is something I think I'm going to like, or oh, no, not Starship. Don't want to do it. Thank you very much. Just put it away. Wait for next month's offering. You know, there's some people that really enjoy that. There's some people that just, no. And we want you to know what you're getting into before you sit at a table. Big goal of mine, foreknowledge. So we've gone ahead and we're putting the tags onto Pathfinder 2. So you'll be able to see in there if it's a faction heavy one, if it leans to a certain faction, or if it's got a certain mechanic in it that's going to be there. But a lot of those, again, they're all sitting there TBD1, TBD2, TBD3 until they give us the final design on the game. So hopefully soon, maybe, I'll start seeing final chapters because we have to have time to lay it out and get it to the printer. And it goes to the printer in March. So that's kind of our deadline, is we will start announcing more information in March going forward. We're getting a new logo, I can say that. We kind of have to because we're getting a brand new logo for the game. We're calling it 2nd edition, but that's only because we can't think of a better way to differentiate between Pathfinder role-playing game and Pathfinder role-playing game because they both have the same name. Though I've heard some people refer to it as Pathfinder Classic and Pathfinder 2nd. We didn't want to go with the advanced. So, yeah. Yes. We've had conversations with Hero Lab in how we can get them some of our information. The concern we have internally is boon farming and people going and cherry picking what they want, and that's what they'll play. But we also realize more people use Hero Lab than not anymore, though I understand that Starfinder Online has not received quite as much love as Hero Lab did for Pathfinder. So we're in discussions with them all the time, with Ron and BJ, to see what we can do and what we can give them, that you'd be able to go in and maybe even when you purchase it in off the points tool in Paizo, it would give you a code and then you could enter that code in Hero Lab and it would flap it up and then you could have that for your character. And as long as you know the code. Now, people are going to share the codes. I understand this. I do understand that the world there's just going to be some people that don't follow what we'd like them to do. Not naive, but I'd like to believe that most of the player base will adhere to the spirit of what we're trying to do. And after that, people can photocopy boons, but again, spirit of the game. That's my mantra. I sleep at night. It's good. Do you have a question?
Where's Paizo based? Because you said you're new to the DC area for the weekend.
Seattle. Yeah, I drove from North Bay, Canada to Seattle 4 years ago and found an apartment and started living there. So Half of our staff is from Milwaukee and the Midwest, Minnesota area, and that's the group that was with TSR that went out, worked Wizards, and then formed Paizo. And then the other half is mostly Seattle-based. So. Yes, brand new volunteer shirts available at Gen Con. I've pitched an idea of a Skittermander and a goblin, and the Skittermander, helping, and the goblins got the. We've also said we're taking the knives and the machetes and the weaponry off of them so that they will be more venue friendly, because wearing those in schools kind of has teachers raising eyebrows at us. And they will have the OPF branding on them as well. For those of you that don't know, 3 years ago, Paizo partnered with the Organized Play Foundation as its volunteer arm. So the volunteers that run our games run them through the Organized Play Foundation, and then Paizo goes and says, okay, these are the conventions we're doing that could use volunteers. Anyone want to come help? This is what we can do for them. So it'll have OPF branding as well. We're working really hard this year to separate out the Organized Play Foundation is a separate entity to Paizo. We are not the same, even though it looks very similar, because I wear the Organized Play Manager hat at Paizo, and I'm also the acting executive director of OPF. It's what you get when you're trying to build a new company. And so the plan is there, and we are in talks with getting a new employee that will take over OPF, and then I will stay and focus on what the program and the brand looks like on the Paizo side. So, yeah.
So, I was wondering, as a creator of your 21st team of Paizo, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when the writers create a story, do they run it so you get to play it, or do you just never get to play it? Do you set the GM when you go out places?
Oh no, I'm going to play here. I'm going to find someone's table that's empty, and I'll jump into tables. Most of our writing is done by freelance contract. We actually do not have staff writers. So what we have is a team of rules designers. There's 4 of them, led by Jason Bullman, and they come up with the mechanics and the back set, and then they go out and say, all right, I want a fairy dragon, and who wants to write this? And we go to our pool of writers and say, who's interested in making the mechanics for these? And they say, oh, yeah, I want to. No, not really my idea of fun. We also do that with the stories and the adventure paths. So each line of products at Paizo has a managing developer who puts the outline together and the gist of the story, and okay, this is going to happen, and these are key NPCs, and these are key activities that need to go, and then they send that outline out, and they hire on contract writers. So we have a method of getting new writers in that we do open call, and it's actually managed by Society, because Society goes through writers faster than the adventure paths, because we're writing 2 a month versus 1 a month. And last I heard, John and Linda had buzzed through the open call slush pile and done a lot of feedback to the ones that we got, either yay or nay, or hey, this is good, but this is where we'd like you to go. And so we should be looking at doing another open call sometime in 2019 for aspiring writers that want to do it. Other than that, we've got an in-house editing pool, if you're an editor, an in-house tech team, an in-house customer service team, and an in-house warehouse team. So if you're ever looking for anything in those, keep an eye on Paizo.com. We put out all of our job postings up there. So, and it's a fun place to work, because you get a game all day. Yeah. But no, what happens is I normally, in our process, in our team, with our 4 developers, we have a lead developer, John Compton, and then we have Thurston Hillman that does Starfinder Society. Linda Zayas-Palmer does our Adventure Card Games Society play, and works with Pathfinder Society. And then Michael Sayers come in, and he kind of does mostly Pathfinder Society and kind of floats where we need extra bodies. But we sit down and we plan out the year, and we come up with this great, huge, massive outline that says, this is what we want to have happen. And we pitch it to Eric Mona, who's our publisher, and he says, yep, that's good, or nope, I need you to go back and tweak it. And then we have to run it by our creative directors just to make sure we're not breaking any of their plans for the future, because they might not have told us. And then once we get it through all the approvals, John and his team break it down into individual scenarios, and they do all of that work. And I actually don't see it. So it's really kind of cool, because then I can go to a convention and sit down and go, well, I know the gist of this, but I don't know the adventure enough so let's play. And so I get to see it the first time run. And then sometimes I'll go back and go, okay, guys, you know, that fight, it was a little hard, or maybe we need to rethink something. And we've gone back and we've edited and reissued some of our adventures because the field testing in the first couple of weeks found out that there was an issue with them. It's great. It's fine. I'm not traumatized by the huge, ginormous spiders that ate my character. No, it's really good. You know, because what looks really good on paper sometimes does not translate to really good on the game table. You know which one I'm talking about? Which is why most of those are retired. Yeah. One of the things, going back to your question on 1, we have committed to sanctioning all APs but 2. The 2 that we're having problems struggling with, the World Wound, Wrath of the Righteous, because it's mythic. We don't know how that would play into society play. And we're having a lot of problems with Hell's Vengeance because it's evil characters. And in a neutral good society, we're not quite sure how to say, yeah, you can go be evil characters and earn rewards for it. So it's not that we won't, it's just those 2 give us more pause, and we actually have to sit down and consider what we're going to do with them a little bit more. So we've kind of put them on the very bottom of the stack. Another thing that we've said we would do is update the additional resources for every book that we publish through July. So they made great strides this month, catching those ones up, and we hope to be able to. One of the things that the societies do is every book that's published by Paizo gets reviewed by a team of volunteers and GMs out in the field, and then comes back to us with their recommendations of, hey, we think this is going to break a table, this is a little overpowered, no, these are good, these are wonderful options and characters will love them, let's let them in. And then we publish what we call the additional resources document that says, in this book, everything's valid for play except, and then we call out the key things that there's some things that either the GMs can't adjudicate, or they could, but it wouldn't be the same everywhere you go, and we're trying to give the same experience no matter where you play. So those are the kind of things that we have to really watch the campaign for. At this point, we have committed to allowing 98% of the core rulebook through. We've said we really don't want anything in 2 to be gated at this point. So, which brings us to, I think one of the questions is goblins. Are they in or are they out? We still don't know. As soon as we know, that will be something that will be known, because that changes the face of society play in a lot of ways. We have only ever had 50 goblins in the campaign. They were given out to one convention by one of my predecessors as a special, you survive this. Either they had to get out of a gate, and either they got out and they got a goblin, or they stayed in the entire room. The ceiling collapsed on the room and everyone died. And I think he killed 21 tables that night. It was a 50-table room, only half of them got goblins. But that was the only time we've ever had them in organized play. So now that they're going to be a core race, potentially, we're reevaluating how we're going to handle them in society play. So we still have about 10 minutes before I have to make sure I hand over and we clear for the next one. Anyone else got questions? Things you want to know? Just. They're playable characters. It's the only way you can play a goblin character in society. We've always said that the core races are available. And then as a GM reward, we gave out other races over the years and said, oh, thank you for running, because it's not easy to run and you have to do all this extra prep. You can now play Oreads, or you can now play Asmars and Tieflings, or you can now play something that's not in the core rulebook. But goblins have always been that one race that we never quite said, yeah, sure, large scale you can play it. So it was only this handful. And mostly because they're chaotic evil beings in Pathfinder 1, and that really disrupts the table. If, the only 2 words you know are fire and burn, and you're running around with horse choppers. They're fun, and that's why we have the Weeby Goblin series, because we wanted to give everyone a chance to play them, but not in the structure of an organized play campaign. So we did Weeby Goblins 5 was the latest installment. There may be another installment being worked on in the office for the last one. So, because, while Paizo's emblem is the golem, the goblin is our most iconic figurehead, and that's why it's on the shirt, and it's, Paizo goblins break the computers, and anytime something goes wrong, so it's blamed on goblins in the office. I can't find my teacup, the goblins took it somewhere. So yeah, that's been one of our big ones, is how do we take that kind of disruptive influence and make it a part of the society where the motto is explore, report, cooperate. Got some challenges. We'll make it. We can do this. We have an awesome team working on it, but we can do this. Yeah, so one of the other things that we really wanted to do is look at the story that we were giving in 2. And we've had, over the course of the 11 years of Society 1, we've gone to the World Wound, we've gone to the planes, the elemental planes. We've traveled all around our world of Galarion, which is where the society is set. But it was like, okay, so how do we not retread the same stories? How do we make this feel different, but still introduce the world to new people? And I'm really, really excited about this because my background is a historian, and I see a lot of history coming out in this season. I'm just like, oh, excited. These are all the things I wanted to know when I started playing that no one ever explained to me, and they weren't in the book. So that's kind of where we're going, is some of the backstory of what Galarion looked like, what happened, how did the Pathfinder Society show up. We know from scenarios that if you ever get a chance to run what we call the intro series, it's the confirmation, which is your graduation ceremony from school, and then you go on to the Wounded Wisp, and it is the tavern that the first Pathfinders met in. And there's also a reference in a different scenario to the Paunched Pig as being the other tavern that the society members met in. So I said, okay, so how do we have 2 taverns? And which one is canon? Which one do we go with? And Thirsty in his lovableness said, well, because he wrote Wounded Wisp. I'm like, why didn't you use Paunched Pig? And he goes, well, I kind of envisioned it that one of 2 ways. Either the Paunched Pig is where they first met and said, hey, this would be a cool idea. But the Wounded Wisp is where they actually sat down and said, okay, now we have a charter. Similar to our government. They kind of talked about it for a while before they started meeting in Philadelphia and wrote things. Or they were on a pub crawl. And they started in the Paunched Pig, and they went through Absalom all the way to the Wounded Wisp. And that's why no one can quite remember which of the taverns it started in. They just know it did. And I'm like, I'm going to go with the second one. The first one sounds intriguing, but I like the second one for flavor. So in my headcanon, at least, that's what happened is the Pathfinder Society is a pub crawl kind of organization. There could have been worse beginnings. So you play those 2, and then every year we've introduced another repeatable entry-level adventure to play that will kind of give you a story. If you don't play anything else, it gives you a good overview of it. So one of the things we looked at is, do we want a confirmation for Pathfinder 2? And the answer kind of is, yeah, you kind of need something. You need something to introduce the society and where it's based in Absalom, which is our capital city. We kind of want to say who's who in it. The leadership that was given to us from Eric Mona when the first thoughts came out about a society was that there's this decemvirate. There are 10 masked individuals. They don't even know who they are. They get to their meetings through a shadowy hallway, and they stand in alcoves that obscure their features, or if they come out, they actually have their masks on. So no one's ever known who they are. And I'm like, the completionist in me wants to know. I need to know. And there have been many player theories over the years. If you search the internet for Decemvirate, you'll find all of this one's got to be it, and that one's got to be it, and this one. And if you're playing the current season, some hints of this are coming out. The season symbol this year is a Decemvirate helm that's cracked. So for the long-standing players, we're trying to pull in some of those storylines that we've been teasing for 11 years and giving that sense of completion. Because I'm like, it's kind of like they were talking about the Star Wars movies when I got in here and we were getting ready for the panel. And it was, you've got to know. You need to, by the end of that 9th film, we really need to have a feeling of completion and everything's there and we've wrapped the story. And I feel that we need that for society. So it's how can we wrap this as story and still leave enough little tendrils that we can grab onto it and keep going. But if you never played that story, you don't need those tendrils. You can just start and go, oh, okay, this is what it's about. This is my first day off the boat, and I now understand what I'm doing. But yeah, so that one, the Decemvirate with their masks, has always been the shady overlords of the society. And talking about some of the Season 0, Season 1 early stuff, they were shadier than not back then. They did a lot of things that might not have fit with the neutral good aspect of the society. So that's some of it too, is can we, how can we reset, find a level playing field and go forward? But yeah, so are we going to have mass Decemvirate going into 2? Most likely. But there's got to be a shakeup at the top somewhere. But yeah, so those are kind of some of our storylines. That's where we're going. I'm excited about it. I'm enthused. And I told myself that I would stop doing this job the day I wasn't excited to come out, and that I didn't want to. The day I said, oh, I don't want to go to a convention, maybe it would be the day and I committed for at least another couple of years. So I was like, yeah, let's go. So I hope you guys are as excited to play it as I am to bring it to you. We will continue to judge 1 based on 2 and the play numbers. It's data that we can pull. So everything will be in a transition for probably, my guess is 2 years, at least, where we let people finish up their story. Because one of the things we want is we want people to have that sense of, I've done everything I wanted to in 1 before you have to jump or before you make the jump. I never want people to sit there and go, oh, if I only coulda, if I only woulda, if I given the opportunity, I would just 4 more games, 3 more games, 2 more games, because you want to plan it, but real life comes in and you don't always get those games in, and then you get to the end of it and you're like, yeah, I missed out on shucks, So we're really trying to find a way not to spoil or anything, but give everybody a sense of belonging and enthusiasm. And then say, hey, we realize we only published 3 scenarios at the launch, and we can't publish any faster. So if you're interested, go back and play all these, because one of the things that we're trying to curate, and the community is helping us, is a list of scenarios that will, if you only played them, it would give you the story of the society through those 10 seasons. So that way they can say, oh yeah, I see the high points, I see the, and in what order you want to play them. That's another big one, because there's some spoilers that come out in Season 2 or 3 that if you play them then, it really kind of doesn't set things up well. You want to play them at the end. So those are some things you'll see. Check out our blogs. They usually go up Wednesday. And it's always something focused on either Starfinder Society, Pathfinder Society, or the adventure card game. Sometimes they bleed over to Thursday if I don't get them in quite early enough, or if we're just swamped on deadlines. But Wednesday, Thursday is usually our blog spot. And again, the website, Paizo, Paizo.com. Yeah. And I found out it's because it's a little pi symbol. I only wore the shirts for 3 years before someone pointed that out. I'm like, oh, okay, because the Brits pronounce it Paizo and the Piazzo, and yeah, Paizo. So thank you very much. It's been wonderful talking to you. And I will be in the organized playroom up in the National Ballrooms area for most of the convention when I'm not here. I do have one more panel tomorrow night at 8. It's the history of Paizo and the development of it from a magazine publisher to a role-playing game.